9 worshippers kidnapped as gunmen storm Celestial Church in Ondo State. Welcome to our channel. If this is your first time, kindly subscribe and turn on the notifications bell. The sanctuary that should have offered spiritual refuge became a scene of terror as armed men invaded a place of worship and dragged 9 congregants into captivity, adding another grim chapter to Nigeria's escalating security crisis and demonstrating that even houses of God are no longer safe from criminal predators. 9 persons have been abducted by suspected kidnappers who stormed a Celestial Church of Christ branch in Uso community, Ondo State, in a brazen attack that has sent shockwaves through the religious community and intensified concerns about the vulnerability of worship centers across Nigeria. The incident, which occurred during what should have been a peaceful religious gathering, represents the latest in a disturbing pattern of attacks targeting churches and other places of worship across the country. The audacity of the kidnappers in invading a church premises to abduct worshippers underscores the deteriorating security situation in Ondo State and raises urgent questions about whether any location remains safe from criminal elements. According to reports from the community, the armed men stormed the Celestial Church branch in Uso with sophisticated weapons, overwhelming whatever security arrangements existed at the worship center. The attackers reportedly arrived in the evening hours, a time when many churches conduct evening services or special prayer sessions. Armed men quickly seized control of the situation before congregants could escape or raise effective alarm. Eyewitnesses described scenes of chaos and terror as the gunmen rounded up worshippers, selecting 9 individuals whom they forcibly marched out of the church premises and into waiting vehicles or nearby forest areas. The selection process used by the kidnappers remains unclear, whether they targeted specific individuals based on prior intelligence about their financial status or simply grabbed whoever was available remains subject to investigation. The 9 victims, whose identities have not been fully disclosed pending notification of all family members and ongoing security operations, are believed to include both men and women who had gathered for worship. Their current whereabouts remain unknown, and though security sources suggest they have likely been taken to forest hideouts commonly used by kidnapping gangs operating in the region. Uso community, located in Ondo State, has been plunged into mourning and anxiety following the abduction. Family members of the kidnapped worshippers have been thrown into anguish, uncertain about the fate of their loved ones and fearful about potential demands for ransom that typically follow such kidnappings. The psychological trauma extends beyond immediate families to the entire congregation and community, which must now grapple with the violation of what they considered sacred space. The Celestial Church of Christ, a prominent indigenous African church with branches across Nigeria and in several countries worldwide, is known for its distinctive white garments and spiritual practices. The denomination has a significant following in southwestern Nigeria, including Ondo State, making this attack particularly concerning for the large community of adherents who may now fear attending services. Church leaders have condemned the attack in the strongest terms, describing it as a sacrilegious violation of holy ground and an assault on religious freedom. They have called on security agencies to prioritize the rescue of the abducted worshippers and ensure that those responsible face the full weight of the law. Religious leaders across denominations have expressed solidarity with the affected church and called for enhanced security measures at worship centers. The incident highlights a troubling expansion of kidnapping activities in Ondo State, which had previously been considered relatively more secure compared to states in Nigeria's northwest and some parts of the north-central regions where banditry and kidnapping have reached epidemic proportions. However, recent months have witnessed an uptick in criminal activities across the state, including attacks on communities, highway kidnappings, and now the invasion of a church. Security analysts attribute the spread of kidnapping to multiple factors, including the porosity of state borders that allows criminal gangs to move freely between jurisdictions, inadequate security personnel to effectively patrol vast rural areas, the lucrative nature of kidnapping as criminals collect millions in ransom payments, and the apparent impunity enjoyed by many perpetrators who are rarely apprehended or prosecuted. And the choice to target a church is particularly significant and troubling. Places of worship have historically been considered off limits even during periods of conflict, representing neutral ground where people could seek spiritual solace regardless of external circumstances. The violation of this unwritten code suggests either a complete breakdown of traditional restraints on criminal behavior or a calculated strategy by kidnappers to maximize psychological impact and demonstrate that nowhere is safe. Ondo state government has been notified of the incident, and state security agencies, including the police, Amotekun Corps, and other security outfits, have reportedly mobilized to search for the kidnapped victims and apprehend the perpetrators. However, the effectiveness of these responses has been questioned by residents who point to previous kidnapping incidents where victims languished in captivity for weeks before being released, often after substantial ransom payments. The Nigeria Police Force in Ondo State has confirmed the incident and assured the public that investigations are ongoing. Police spokespersons typically promise that everything possible is being done to rescue victims and bring perpetrators to justice. Though public confidence in such assurances has eroded due to the persistent nature of kidnapping activities and the relatively few successful prosecutions of kidnappers. Community vigilante groups and local hunters familiar with forest terrains are reportedly assisting security agencies in combing forests and suspected hideouts where the victims might be held. These local security volunteers often possess better knowledge of forest partisan hideouts than conventional security forces, making their participation crucial in rescue operations. The financial implications for the victims' families are dire. Kidnapping gangs typically demand ransoms ranging from hundreds of thousands to millions of naira, depending on their assessment of victims' financial capacity. Families are often forced to sell properties, borrow money, or appeal to community members for contributions to raise ransom payments, even though paying ransoms is technically illegal and arguably incentivizes further kidnappings. The psychological trauma extends beyond the immediate crisis. Even if the 9 victims are eventually released unharmed, they will likely carry lasting emotional and psychological scars from their ordeal. Studies of kidnapping victims show high rates of post-traumatic stress disorder, anxiety, depression, and difficulty returning to normal life. The broader community also suffers collective trauma, with many now afraid to attend church services or gather in groups, fundamentally altering social and religious life. Religious freedom advocates have noted that attacks on places of worship, whether churches, mosques, or other religious institutions, represent not just criminal acts, but violations of fundamental human rights. The ability to gather for worship without fear of violence or abduction is essential to religious liberty, and the erosion of security at worship centers threatens this basic freedom. The incident has reignited debates about security arrangements at churches and other religious institutions. So while some argue that churches should employ armed security personnel, install sophisticated surveillance systems, and implement strict access controls, others contend that such militarization of worship spaces contradicts the open, welcoming nature of religious institutions and may prove financially prohibitive for many congregations. Some churches in high-risk areas have already begun implementing enhanced security measures, including limiting entrance points, conducting security checks on attendees, employing private security guards, and coordinating with local police for patrols during service times. However, smaller churches in rural areas like the Uso branch often lack resources for such comprehensive security arrangements. The Uso kidnapping also raises questions about intelligence gathering and early warning systems. In many previous kidnapping incidents, community members later report having noticed suspicious activities or unfamiliar faces in the days leading up to attacks. Whether such indicators were present in Uso, and if so, whether they were reported to or acted upon by security agencies remains unclear but represents an important line of inquiry. As the rescue efforts continue and families of the 9 kidnapped worshippers endure agonizing uncertainty, the incident serves as yet another stark reminder of Nigeria's ongoing security crisis. The fact that citizens cannot feel safe even in churches places specifically dedicated to peace, spirituality, and community, illustrates how deeply insecurity has penetrated Nigerian society. For the Celestial Church community in Uso and beyond, the trauma of this attack will linger long after the immediate crisis is resolved. The sacred space where they gathered to worship has been violated, their sense of security shattered, and their faith community fractured by fear and anguish. Rebuilding that sense of safety and community will require not just the safe return of the kidnapped victims, but comprehensive security reforms that demonstrate to Nigerians that their government can actually protect them, even in their places of worship. Until then, the empty seats where 9 worshippers once sat stand as silent testimony to a nation struggling to protect its citizens from predators who recognize no boundaries, respect no sacred spaces, and answer to no law except the pursuit of ransom money and the power that comes from instilling fear in vulnerable populations.